Steve, how are you? You look happy. You look happy. You look eager.
It's podcast time. I'm wonderful.
Okay. Okay. You look excited to be here. You're back
Yeah.
from your big trip into in the Hoosier State, but not related to the Hoosiers at all. Just the other football team that plays there. One of the other football teams that
One
plays
of the football teams. One of the ones that's halfway decent, apparently.
there. Yeah, the one that's pretty good. So we'll talk about that. But first, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. Steve, we've got a lot to catch up on. You, of course, as I mentioned, you went out to Notre Dame this weekend. I have some questions. That's all I'll say there. But we'll also, this is, of course, is a Penn State podcast, so that's what you want to hear about. We'll talk about the Penn State Indiana game. We will also talk about the Penn State Maryland game. And then our sports media is where we will talk about the Notre Dame aspect, I think, a little bit. And then, of course, it's October 30th as we record today. So I've got some questions as it relates to candy. So excited about that. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm gonna throw a curveball at you.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna let you open up the show today, Steve. Here's my question for you. Why am I in a good mood after watching Penn State barely win against Indiana?
Well, it's a win, right? Your team won. I guess I was surprised. All these Penn State fans who wanted a close game, wanted competitive games, don't give us dog of a games. They get a down to the wire game against a Big Ten opponent who's been in the league forever, who's given Penn State a history of problems, and then they were bitching about the close game. So I don't know. I think you should be in a good mood. You got a W. Nobody got any more hurt that we know of. So I don't know. I think you should be in a good mood.
Okay, all right. I think that's where I'll begin. I've been thinking about it, and
And I hope some of our listeners that are listening to this in a vehicle, one in particular, just kept it on the road for that optimism.
yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about, and that's why I asked, "How are you feeling?" I wanted to see how you were feeling about it because I think collectively people were a little grumpy, and it started the second that I sat down in the stadium at 11:40, and the guy row in front of us, a couple seats over. We got to get a Fire Franklin chant going. We got to get a Fire Franklin chant going. Penn State comes out, gets stopped on third down. It is raining booze, and I don't know. It just was. Everybody was so anxious, and then everybody wasn't, and I think that's exactly how the game played out. And I think particularly I want to start with the quarterback, and I think we have to talk about that. He obviously obviously throws his first pick, and all season long, the thing that I have wanted to see is not necessarily him throwing that interception, but how is he going to respond when that first hurdle kind of came up and showed up? And I think obviously the Ohio State game in itself, that was the first really major big hurdle that he's had to face all season. And I went back and thought about the game and watched the game a little bit, actually all of the game through. And I think why I'm in a good mood relates to the fact that I watched Drew Aller feel like seemingly mature in front of my eyes on Saturday. And I think it was a little bit of a microcosm of him throwing that interception and then him throwing the 57-yard touchdown pass to win the game. And I think that's why I'm excited right now. I don't know if it's going to necessarily play out that way for the rest of the season. It was 2 minutes of happiness of after 58 minutes of kind of crap. But I think that's why I'm in a good mood, or at least in a better mood than I was leaving the stadium on Saturday when I was leaving semi-delirious, I think would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I mean, wasn't there, listened from afar, watched the score from afar, can appreciate the frustration that people had with the game. I don't know about, no, I do know about, and I'm sure we'll talk about this season yet, depending on how Michigan goes. And in the offseason, the marriage of coach and program is as good as it's going to get for either one of them at this point. There's nothing better for either one of them out there. It is what it is, and it's not horrible. The folks who wrote the contract, I would love them to write a contract for me someday because it was very favorable to the coach. So I think that stuff is beyond silly, and I'm not a blindly support the program kind of guy, but They won the game. And sometimes you're going to have dog of games like this. There's one every year where it's a dog of a game against a team you probably should beat, especially in conference, because people just seem to know you better. Something goes on. It's after the Ohio State loss, and you say you don't want to have it beat you twice, but the players know they're favored by 30 some points too, and they come out unmade, motivated, or go through the motions, or Indiana plays out of its mind, whatever. I do think a W anytime is a good thing, especially in conference. So I know what people saw. I appreciate it. I understand what the problems are, but you won, and go win again this week, and then the next week, and that's all you can do.
I think the other thing that's helping me kind of sleep well right now is the fact that the mistakes that happened that led to the game being so close are all very much fixable within just the context of the next game. I think, yes, the quarterback could play well, but I think I'm more so talking about the defense. Number one, the defense is allowed to have a bad game. For as good as they've played this season, they were kind of due for a not so great game, and sometimes that happens. But you look at the I think it was the 69 yarder, I think, and somebody just took the blitz and nobody covered. The safety didn't cover, and that's just a miscommunication error. And obviously that can't happen against Michigan, but and it really can't happen ever again, type thing. But at the same time, like, that's a fixable mistake. And I think there was a part in Saturday's game where I almost texted you because I felt like a snowball moment. It was a high rating on the Steve Snowball Index, and it came there before the end of the first half when Penn State scored a touchdown, and I knew that they were going to get the ball back, and I knew they were going to score again before half, and then really, I don't know, you go back and look at the like ESPN probability index, which obviously isn't the letter of the law, but you can see it in the third quarter where Penn State pretty much is starting to pull away. And I think that chunk of game also is helping me sleep better right now. And so I think that's where I'm at with the game. I think I feel like they got I feel like sometimes you need to almost have a bad moment to get the bad juju out. And I think the last 2 minutes were kind of a microcosm of that again. And now you get another kind of sort of hopefully a get right game against Maryland before the last real test and the last real chance at everything.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. A win is a win. I mean, as long as nobody's getting hurt, as long as something that isn't correctable there happens or has happened repeatedly, Ohio State's receivers were much better. So the defense, there's a part of me, that's like, okay, and no fly zone. Well, you gave up some big touchdowns here. How about we just shut up and play, right? And that's always the danger of critical person like me making up your nicknames as the season moves along. But no, they won, and they're going forward, and that's all you can hope for. And up, what's next? And I think that's what they've got to do. That's the mentality they have to have. And I think maybe they didn't exactly have that in terms of getting the game. I think there was a little bit of, okay, it's Indiana. Okay, we're going to be better than them. And Indiana's not awful, but they're not good either. So that's what happens when those kind of teams play each other.
Well, and we've talked about that before. There is a human element to all of this of you're going to be more excited when Michigan comes to town than when Indiana comes to town. That's just how this works. But as long as you can go out there and handle business, which Penn State did, I think then you're doing your job. I'm excited. I feel weirdly feel better, and I don't know why about the rest of Penn State's season. And it's all
because they
largely
bounced back and didn't bite them in the butt, right? Like, they
yeah.
didn't lose after the game they lost. I mean, they didn't get 2 losses in a row, so that's a plus because that's happened before.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good way to look at it. Did you watch the game? I know you were
I watched some of it when we
game.
got back home to
Okay.
see to see confirmation bias of what I thought I saw. I mean,
Well,
and honestly, the biggest thing I watched for, honestly, was the last play, just to see how he hit the receiver or not, and was the pass underthrown, right? Because I listened into the radio piece, it sounded like it was a little underthrown, and it might have been a shade underthrown, but it wasn't. It was a good pass. So I wanted to see that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, let's stay there with how you consumed the game. I did go back and watch the game. I have to say, this is now 2 CBS broadcasts. I'm pleasantly pleased. Like they do a solid job, I think would be the best way to describe it. It's not fancy over the top. It's a solid B. It's a solid B, and I appreciate that. I think would be the best way to put it.
And it was a B-level game. I mean, realistically, even before the game was played, right? That's what happens. The broadcast crews that get these games are the teams that can do a B game, and they did. So all is right with the world. They didn't mess it up, right? And
Yeah,
that's always your hope that they don't.
I think the main thing that surprised me and the thing that I liked the most about the CBS broadcast was how they used their Skycam. And they did a nice job of using that throughout the day for a noon game that's Penn State and Indiana. Like the ratings don't come out till tomorrow. I doubt it will crack the top. Maybe it will crack the top five. No, it won't crack the top five of games watched this weekend. But it just, you can tell they care. They want to do a solid job, and I think I hate to say it, but I think it's still NBC, CBS, and Fox. Like it is still that order right now for the Big Ten rights
That was
holders.
going to be my follow-up question. And I do think the CBS, I think you're really right about what they do at the Skycam. I think that's one thing they do well across their broadcast with college football. They use that as an established shot. They use it at the right times as kind of a scene setter. It's not so much a play-by-play shot for them. We've talked before about the video gamification of broadcasts. They don't use it as much for that as some other places do. It's kind of like setting the college football atmosphere inside said stadium for you each Saturday. And I think because they do it, that's a CBS shot. Like I think you could show that to the broadcasters, the directors from the other shows, and say, "Hey, who did this?" And they'd be able to say, "Oh, that was CBS."
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. I guess excuse me. I guess we'll hit on the in-stadium part too before we quickly move on. Obviously, you weren't there, but I was there. Game day presentation for the most part has gotten a little better. There were two weird moments. I wrote about the one on the blog this week, which we're just going to beat to death at this point, which is the "Are you ready for the fourth quarter" thing. I just, please stop, please. I don't want to hear it.
Who says it
Uh,
again?
the Mike Man.
Oh, so you don't like the Mike Man now?
I never said I don't like the Mike Man. I don't like the Mike. The Mike Man, it seems like a nice guy. Okay. He seems like a nice guy. He's doing what he's told. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'll say about that. All right.
Was Jump Around still part of the show?
It was. Yeah, it was.
Oh, so it's here to stay too.
Yeah, it's now Penn State tradition. Look out, Wisconsin.
If this were pro wrestling, man, Penn State would be getting beat up by other people for like gimmick infringement.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
holy cow.
The weirdest part of Saturday though is, and I don't remember what quarter it was in. It was pretty early, I think, maybe second quarter. There was a TV timeout and they played Mr. Brightside, I think was the song. And there's this cheerleader running around with a sign that just says "sing along," like the signs that if you ever go to like a studio recording that say clap or laugh or sad noise, like in Shrek. Weird, just weird. And I don't know, like a couple people, and I'm not quite there yet. A couple people I saw pointed out this weekend that like part of the process of going to a Penn State football game now is like you're expected to sing along. And I'm not quite there yet, like, but it does feel like they're trying to make that a thing at Penn State games.
For all songs or just for Mr. Brightside?
All songs, every
Okay.
song, and it's I don't
It
know.
used to make me mad when they would do that with they wouldn't do it for Sweet Caroline, right? Like they wouldn't put the graphics up for the lyrics up for Sweet Caroline, right? Because people knew it, right? And then they would play Living on a Prayer, and they were putting the lyrics up for that. And I thought, well, who the hell doesn't know that if they know the other one? Like, really? So I've always thought the whole education process of whatever, and honestly, to the game experience, the Notre Dame thing didn't do that. It was about the football game. I mean, they interviewed a couple of students, they did some stuff, they interviewed the famous people on the sideline, Jerome Bettis, whatever else, welcome the crowd. It wasn't, and I don't mind it being a participatory event. Don't get me wrong. It's spectator sports. It's whatever else. But I think not everything needs to be a sing along. Not everything needs to be get you in, like, just go ahead and play football and win the game. I'll cheer for you. But
I think that's about where I'm at with it too. Like, give me pump up videos and let me run through a wall type thing. That's about where I'm at with it. All right, let's shift gears there. We're gonna switch up the order a little bit. How was the Notre Dame experience, Steve? How was the game day experience for you? You
we were
went to
there 10 or
see
12 years ago when Penn State played out there, and that's when we were introduced to cornhole, which we hadn't seen before, hadn't played before. So we brought the board, made the boards when we came back. That was really cool. This year we were closer to the stadium. They renovated it. The facade of the stadium looks like it belongs on campus, which was intentional. Obviously, student services and stuff are inside the facility as well. Like it's a student union, but there's student stuff inside the stadium that are not there for game day, which is a really cool concept. Concessions on campus were all student run with tents that popped up during the day and charcoal grills and them selling hamburgers and hot dogs. The benefit said dorm floor, group, charity, whatever else, which was kind of quaint. Because it's closer to campus, band marches through campus, just as the blue band marches up University Drive. So kind of the same, but there's buildings around. That was cool. It just felt, and I use this word, and I'm not sure it's the right word because, they have their own network and they're making billions of dollars, but it felt pure / Midwestern. It was just different. It didn't feel like there wasn't the carnival on Curtin Road, right? They weren't trying to sell me stuff. They were, but it was the students trying to sell me because they were making money for their group. And because maybe Notre Dame has more money than God, or is God, right? There's the church. They don't need my money as desperately as the entity. They're happy with the kids to do the concession stand thing. So that was neat. Game itself, a little less commercial inside because they've got all the NBC money. Maybe they don't see the ads for, I don't even know who's over because I have only been inside one game this year at Beaver Stadium. Who's in the ads over the portals when you walk in? Like inside?
It's a couple different things. I've seen Duncan, and I've seen, I think, maybe
Geico.
AAA and Geico.
Like that stuff wasn't as prominent to me. Just didn't feel as you were there to watch a football game, which I kind of liked. And honestly, the highlight is anytime I'm old school enough that anytime Pitt gets pounded, I'm good with that.
There it is. Yeah. Well, Pitt in the carnival catching haymakers from Steve.
Exactly.
I still haven't been to a game at Notre Dame. I think it's that's a potential bye week game some year for me. Assuming
it was worth doing. I mean, it was worth seeing and experiencing, and just every gate's named for a former coach that won a national championship type deal. Team walks in from the library in suit and tie. I mean, I get it. We get our guys drive up and do the walk, and I get it. Everybody has their thing. It's just neat to see somebody else's thing.
Yeah. Okay. You particularly wanted to discuss, two aspects. I guess one aspect you wanted to kind of compare and contrast Penn State's radio crew versus the Notre Dame crew, and then you also happen to catch, I assume, driving back the Ohio State game.
Yeah, I mean, I think Penn State's radio group is one of the best in the country, and it was confirmed listening to those 3 games. Steve Jones and Jack Ham know what they're doing. Listeners don't miss plays. They're professional about what they go about, they go about to do. They're homers, but not as obvious as some of these guys. I mean, even Notre Dame, they were up 14-0, and the color guy, I think it was Ryan Harris, was complaining about the play calling. Well, they need to do better here. And it felt cheerleader-y, which we don't get, which I think is a good thing as a Penn State fan. Conversely, I think what we do get, and what we did get at the end of the Penn State game, because I did listen to the end of the game, was we get, and Steve told us this when he was on, he's not a media member, right? It's clear who he's working for. And I think that's a good thing to a point. And that point, I think, was on display last week when he discussed post-game, well, as it happened, after Drew Aller's touchdown, his follow-up was, there's the play that everybody said they needed, and you finally got that big play. And it was kind of like it almost sounded as if he were sneering at the naysaying fans. Like, they've proven you wrong, here it is. And then as they were wrapping up, he's like, oh, people will talk about style points today, and that can be debated. Yeah, probably so. But the thing is, they needed to win, and they got to win. And I get that. And everybody else listening to it gets it. I kudos to Brian Tripp, who said after the touchdown conversations, yeah, they needed a big play, but some people probably didn't think they need it today. Right. Yeah. Like it's splitting hairs, right? I mean, I know it's nitpicky, But I think that piece of it is the only piece I would dock that radio group for, because they are clearly as good as anybody in the country in terms of game stuff. I think the little piece is the serving viewers piece by acknowledging the frustration and the context that fans have bringing into the game. And they're not wrong, right? They're seeing the same game. So I think to talk down to them sometimes is a disservice. But otherwise, I think they do an A job compared to what else I've heard out there, because there's a lot of bad radio out there among really good programs.
Do you think that we've talked about this even when Steve was on the podcast, but like he is the source, like that is the voice. Do you think other crews maybe take advantage of that? And is that maybe what you were experiencing with the Notre Dame crew of like, you're going to only hear it from us this way, and that's the only way you can hear it? Or
no, and I think they did admit the frustration, right? Okay, they need to, I mean, it was clear the Notre Dame guys thought they should be up more than 14-0 when they were up 14-0, right? And they were kind of saying that by the play calling, and they need to do a better job doing this and that. And they probably weren't wrong from what some fans were seeing. But they aren't exactly hired to be fans. I just think there's a middle ground there, and it's hard to find. I mean, it's nitpicky to try to find that ground. But I do think Penn State fans would feel more as if they were being heard, or people were being honest with them if that context were provided, right? If they were like, okay, can see how the team's performance today. You know, some people might worry about the style points or whatever else, but they did what they needed to do. Like, just acknowledge that fans aren't nuts.
Right. There's a middle ground.
There's a line. Just say, okay, I can see why you were frustrated with this, but they did win.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I was thinking about that a little bit this weekend, just honestly based off the guy that was sitting next to us, and I happened to look over and a big play happened. I think it was maybe the muff punt. And he wasn't cheering, and it was like, you can't have it both ways. You can't be upset about the performance of the team, and you can't also be upset when a good thing happens to the team that you're paying money, that you're wearing the attire for, you're paying your dues to sit in that seat type thing. And it just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know. I don't want to sound holier than thou, but I have a big problem with booing your team, particularly in college sports. And I know you're just going to say, well, they get paid anyways. But I think, what was Penn State going to do in those 60 minutes against Indiana to erase what happened against Ohio State, or beat Maryland, beat Michigan? There's nothing in that 60 minutes that they can do to fix the problems. They could just go out there and win the football game. And I think if you're going to be grumbly about that, I don't know. That bothers me. And so that's why I asked that question, just because I was thinking about that context of sometimes you just have to face it, that whatever, it doesn't matter. They won by 1 point or more. And that's what you wanted. Enjoy and celebrate that fact, regardless of who the opponent is. Do they have things to fix? Yes. But are there things that came out of that game that you can feel better about? Yes. So
yeah, it could have been 60-3 and people wouldn't have mattered, because you still got to beat Michigan, right? I mean, realistically, right. So that's why it's hard for me to get worked up over the close win, right? It could have been 60-3, still really doesn't matter. Got to beat Michigan. Right. So even if it was 33-24, still doesn't matter. Got to beat Michigan. So, I mean, in the whole grand scheme of things about what makes the season a success, that's what it boils down to, or failure, right? So, yeah.
What was the best part about Notre Dame's game day? Like, best part for you could be.
You saw the leprechaun.
Okay.
Saw a leprechaun on campus, like 5 feet away. If I'd have known they were coming sooner, would have been cool. Like, I mean, I could see him coming, didn't know what the thing was. That's pretty cool. You go to Notre Dame and you're like up close to the leprechaun. I get it. And this is the first female leprechaun, right? So that was kind of fun. Like, yeah, just okay. And as the father, and you didn't ask, but as the father of former college daughters and a guy who's in a classroom with college kids, there were college girls in costumes. They were all tasteful. It was wonderful. Like, it was like, oh, good. We're just going and wearing a costume to the game. We're not trying to be loose clown or whatever else, right? Like, it was nice. So yeah.
There it is. Went downtown after the game this weekend, and this, let me tell you what, you want to experience something, go downtown after a Penn State game on Halloween weekend sober. It's a it's a lot of great people watching. Steve goes to Nashville for the people watching. I go to downtown State
Same thing.
College on
That's true. It's the
Halloween
same thing.
weekend
Yep.
for people watching. All right. Feel good. Anything else you want to add about Notre Dame? The Ohio State broadcast was about the same as the Notre
About the
Dame.
same as Notre Dame. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Paul Keels is really good for Notre Dame. Just their color guy was kind of a cheerleader, right? And I get the Jack Ham uses week because he played and whatever else, but
also
there's a line.
He's also Jack Ham in the 2 Hall of
Right.
Fames. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
You know. So, okay. All right. Moving on to this weekend's game. Same context as we just kind of talked about. Have one more point than Maryland by when the time hits 0. Pretty much. Is that how you feel about it?
Yeah. Although I think they don't play poorly. They play well down there, and they score points. Penn State plays well down there and scores points down there. So I guess I would be surprised if they struggled, even though I think Maryland's better than Indiana. I mean, like everybody thinks Maryland's better than Indiana, but they lost. Maryland lost by 20 to Ohio State at home earlier this season. Penn State's has put points up on them with James Franklin down there as the coach. I guess I'd be more inclined to think Indiana result that we expected this week than not. But yeah, if they win by 1, it's a W.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'm at with it. But I also am. I think again, kind of going back to the initial conversation of excitement, I am very, very excited for this game, in the fact that we saw a big moment for Drew Aller. Like at the end of the day, he led a touchdown game-winning drive, and after his biggest mistake of his career so far, quite literally. And how's he going to build on top of that? And I think he didn't take a step back this weekend by any means. I don't think he was perfect, but he didn't take a step back, and that's why I'm excited. That's what I'm looking for. I'm also just very excited to wake up in my own bed and drive to a Penn State football game.
Be a lot easier if they all played close to home like that, wouldn't it?
Oh man, it's I'm also very excited for the food at Maryland. I've said this multiple times on this podcast, but if you are going to the game this weekend, the best, probably the best Big Ten stadium food. They've got crab everything. They really lean into their heritage. They also have Lido Pizza, which love Lido Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
the one thing you probably shouldn't get at the stadium is coffee. You should probably take along your own coffee.
Are you doing another ad?
Ooh, don't we want to take Death Wish coffee?
Okay, we're doing the Death Wish ad. All right. Yes, that's right. Our friends at Death Wish Coffee are having a little NIL deal thing going on right now. They have an NIL deal, but they don't want to say who the players are. There are 3 players: one from Penn State, one from Michigan, one from Ohio State. I'm starting to lean towards Dom DeLuca as being the Penn State guy. I think that's my new guess, as to who it is. But
maybe that's what we could do. Could we have a reveal after the season?
I'll see. I will work with our
the
sources.
Little logos. It could be like the Brady Bunch logos, right? And it could be like the players, and we could cover them.
I think it should be like the helmet shuffle, but
yeah,
but it's like
little Death Wish coffee logos.
Yeah. See, again. Hopefully the fine folks at the Death Wish Coffee Company are listening to.
I was looking at flavors. I'm about to buy some coffee, I think, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but they sound interesting.
We used their espresso roast this morning for our iced lattes. It was good. All right. I'm trying to think what else I want to add about the Maryland game before Steve hit me with an ad.
Like a streaming service when the ad pops up and you're not expecting it.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was smooth. As smooth as Death Wish Coffee. We've jumped the shark, folks.
In week 2.
No, I look at this game a little bit differently than I look at the UMass game, right? Like the UMass game was the last chance to figure everything out. I think now it's stacking momentum, I think, is the main thing. And that's what I want to see out of Penn State's game against Maryland this weekend. How are you going to stack the momentum towards the pinnacle of the season? Because that's the lens that everything needs to go through right now. So yeah, this will be Talia Tagovailoa's last game against Penn State, and he's played like 90 of them. So it's also poor Talia taking a shot at him. Probably a nice guy. That's all I have to say about that. Anything else there we missed?
Nope. Waiting for it, hoping for a W and seeing what's next.
Okay. All right. It's Monday. Well, it's not just any Monday. It is Monday the 30th, which means Halloween is tomorrow. If you're listening to the podcast, it's likely today. Or if you're listening on Wednesday, it was likely yesterday. But that doesn't matter.
Leftover candy.
You are eating leftover candy. By this point, you probably, regardless of when you listen to the podcast, you probably have most of your candy there. What candy gets eaten last at the Samsel household of Halloween candies?
Well, at this point, nobody buys stuff we're not going to eat, right? I mean, it's probably the last one that gets to the Reese's peanut butter cups the first, right? Like, there's not like there's duds of candy anymore, right? Because the kids aren't going out and getting stuff. So if we have candy in the house, the stuff we're going to eat, which is probably peanut butter cups, Kit Kats, and Hershey's bars.
Okay, so that's like, and that's about what we got.
Those are chocolate. So I forget. Are you a chocolate isn't a candy thing? Is that where this is going?
So that was the other question I'm going to ask. Is it acceptable to enjoy non-chocolate Halloween candy? Because to me, I like the non-chocolate Halloween candy. That's the only time I eat that type of candy, like so Skittles, Starburst, those types of things. So I guess the question is, hold on, let me find the question that I forgot that I texted you.
I think it was just chocolate candy.
Yeah. Is chocolate candy? Is it candy or is it chocolate?
It's both. In my world, the candy umbrella includes chocolate, so I think it's there. And I was going to ask you for examples of the non-chocolate. So Skittles and Starbursts. Yeah, they're okay, but yeah, it's still chocolate for me over all that stuff. So yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we bought Reese's. I think there's some Kit Kats. We bought Take Fives. We bought, I think, just like the little miniature Hershey's. But then we also got like Skittles, and I think it's Skittles and Starburst. I am hoping that the kids all take the chocolate so that I can savor the Starburst and the Skittles.
Have you had enough in any year where you were like worried you were going to run out?
The first year we ran out. We were like, somebody's got to go to the grocery store to buy more Halloween candy because we didn't know. Right. We thought like we were gonna get like 30 kids. We get like up to 100. Like it's like we get a lot of kids that come through. I'll try to keep track this time.
So did you go to the store, or what, did you start pulling like instant hot cocoa packs out?
We had some that
Pop-Tarts
kind of it tided us over. We had enough in the house saved of just other random candies that tided us over until Anna was able to run to the store and come back. So, but we are very prepared this year. We have over 300 pieces of candy.
Oh wow!
Everybody's getting one to start the night type thing. Then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we had one year where I think Susan wasn't paying attention, and I was breaking apart like boxes of like Rice Krispie treats that we were putting in the kids' lunches. Right, like that was like we were getting near the end of the bowl, right? And I'm like, "This is what we got, kids. Get your asses out here before 7:45 at night, and you get better stuff."
We last year, I think the guideline is 6 to 8 here, but like some people come after 8. And last year we probably had like 20 pieces of candy left, and one kid just walked up to the door. Like we left the bowl out, and one kid just walked up to the door and just dumped it all into his bag.
There you go.
Don't be that kid. Okay. All right.
Are you dressing? And I forget, you're not dressing up for handing out.
Not dressing up. Just gonna sit outside. It's cold. It's gonna be cold here tomorrow. It's gonna feel like fall.
It's cold here too. I was trying to see if Susan was gonna wear a costume or not. So we'll see.
I heard a rumor that you might be wearing a costume. Is that?
I've heard that too.
Okay.
For my class, I offered students since classes on October 31st that if they wore a costume, there could be a slight monetary reward, just because I thought college kids need a little encouragement. I told them last Tuesday that it would be Halloween day. Last Thursday, some kid showed up in costume, which was great. But I saw a student today at hockey media session, and as I was leaving, she asked me if I was wearing my costume tomorrow, and I said, "Are you wearing one?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And then she said, "Are you wearing one?" And I said,
Yes, you have to.
"Yes, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll have to be in class to see it." So we'll see.
That's a
I
good.
think
That's a
it'll.
good teacher right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna have a costume. I got to go up and
Okay.
work on it right now. So
Okay. All right. If you are in Steve's class, it's at Stuff Summer Says. You can tweet it to me or DM it. It's a secure, safe message.
oh,
Okay.
yeah, great.
Okay. All right. That's it for this week's show. I forgot to tell you, Steve saw one of our favorite podcast listeners this weekend, Aaron Dunleavy, as I
All right.
was leaving the stadium. He said hello. So
I
shout
know I
out to
haven't seen
Big
him this
D.
season. We'll have to make that happen. We
Yeah,
got two
shout out to
games
Big
left.
D. Give him a quick shout out. All right. And everybody else that listens to the podcast, you'll get your shout out someday. But not everybody's Big D. So anyways, that was this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We have a website. It's called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section for Steve called with Steve. Steve's article did very well last week. It was a good article, and I was very surprised at the feedback. I thought there was going to be negative feedback. Like it was just, and it was pretty positive. People actually really like the noon kicks more than I expected. I think it's maybe my generation that doesn't like them.
Yeah, it's the old people like that. Yeah.
I think that's my take on it. So I don't know if Steve's writing this week, but if he is, excited for that. Let's see. 5 stars, thumbs up. Somewhere in this general vicinity, there's a subscribe button. If you could hit that, that would be great. And we have emails. Mine is Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
And other than that, we've got Twitter handles, which mine is at stuffsummersays. Steve's is
At Steve Samsel.
All right. Have a good Halloween, pals. Enjoy your candy.